You're listening to Hidden Roll, the podcast where we introduce you to the brains behind your favorite toys, games, and all things play. Before we jump into this episode, we'd like to give special thanks to POP, peopleofplay.com, the one-stop hub for all toy and game inventors. Without them, this podcast would not be possible.
You're listening to Hidden Roll, the podcast that introduces you to the brains behind your favorite toys, games, and all things play. I'm artist, engineer, and game inventor David Yakos.
And I'm game designer Branson Faustini, and together we get to interview the people who make the world of fun.
And somebody that has spent, I would say, about a lifetime creating the world of fun is Ed Gartin, our guest today. Ed, thanks for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very stoked to be here.
So a little bit of background on Ed. Ed is the founder of Paperback Creative. He's a toy and game professional, very professional, Ed. He's a product designer, game developer who helps from everything from inventor relations all the way through the production design and support. So you live in an interesting place where you're able to bridge the world of inventor relations all the way through to first articles with a company. Pretty wild skill set.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it's like I was fortuitous in how I got into the industry, and then just the jobs that I had all the way along taught me a lot of really great stuff, and I met a lot of really interesting people, and today I'm trying to put that back together in a way that generates a company, I guess.
Well, one of the things we've found as working in the toy and game industry, but all of our friends, our coworkers, people that we get to know have in common is it's like they've never grown out of their childhood creativity. And I've got to know you really well over the years, just getting to work on some projects together. And I can't imagine what like the 8-year-old Ed was like. Tell us what was childhood Ed?
So childhood Ed I was born in Japan, and then I traveled the world till I came to the US when I was 14. So when I was 8, I was actually overseas and playing with just all sorts of toys and having all sorts of unique experiences. And it was really cool because culturally, when I came back to the US, you just have all these unique experiences, and then you kind of run into what the American experience is, and it gives you a really great perspective on it. But, I would do, we had a computer in my home. I'm not sure everyone did, but we had an Apple IIe, and I would program little games into it. Apple Panic was a big one. And, it was just like, there was the nerd side of me. And then in the afternoon, there was pick up a soccer ball and go play a pickup game. It was like, it was kind of a dichotomy.
So outside of the Apple IIe, were there certain toys that were like your go-to?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, and it was a unique thing because my parents would sort of ditch toys when we would move. So you get fresh toys every 3 to 4 years. One of my favorites from a kid that I'm not sure everybody had was the Evel Knievel wind-up motorcycle, where you could like wind this thing up and you could launch Evel Knievel over whatever. You would just like, it was amazing when you were little, and today.
Oh, Evel Knievel is still like, amazing today.
It's true.
Fresh from Butte, Montana.
It was crazy. It was fun. And then, other times we would get like, Battleship, when we first played that game, a lot of the classic board games kept us kind of engaged. Legos for sure. We had buckets and buckets of them. And those actually kept going with us. Mom didn't ditch those, so that was nice. But some of the other stuff just came and went.
Were there certain ones that you found living in Asia that you didn't get here?
Yeah, there was a lot of and there was a lot of technology and electronics that as a kid was kind of, I had a tiny little driving game that was like light up, and there was a little car that moved on it. And when you'd hit something, it'd go on the screen. And, there was a lot of like electronics that I didn't see kids having here, and I had a Walkman when I was in middle school, like a little Sony Walkman. And, when I would visit,
cool guy with the Walkman.
Well, it wasn't a big deal. In middle school, living in Japan, it was like, yeah, everyone kind of had a Walkman. And then you come back to the States at Christmas and you're like, you don't have a Walkman? That's weird.
I've got a Discman. Just don't step, right? As long as you don't step, it'll keep playing.
Exactly. Too much shaking and it's done. Good times.
What was your professional background before
you got into the toy and game industry?
So I graduated with a design degree, and I actually couldn't get a job in consumer products to start. So I was like, all right, cool. What am I going to do? So I did advertising for a while and worked in ad agencies and managed an ad agency, and then finally got my breakout job. Everybody has that moment where it's like, this is when I finally felt like I was in the industry, and then never looked back. I was just like, this is what I'm going to do.
What was the design degree? Was that industrial design?
Graphic design with so we didn't have a emphasis on industrial design. Mm-hmm. You could graduate with graphic design with like a minor in that kind of stuff, where you do sculpture and you do all the stuff accessory, but the university I went to didn't have industrial design.
You're one of those weird crossover right brain, left brain people where you're coming from the programmy side of things, but yet, have that artistic bent.
Yeah, I mean, you're like that too. I think that's one of the things we share is just like once you get into that creative space, you're reluctant to get out of it, but when you have to, you can do the business side of things and kind of give that some thought. Certainly the creative side is the more fun side.
So you didn't set out to be toy and game. That wasn't like your goal as a kid growing up, going through school, getting sucked into this toy and game vortex.
I didn't know you could make a living in toys and games. I knew I wanted to be in toys. Like that was if I could do that, that would be amazing. But I thought I had to be an inventor. And in order to be an inventor, I thought I had to know something. And that's a little bit why I try and help some of the inventors I do today, because I feel like the access to that information is like a well-kept secret. But I did want to be a designer. I did want to do that thing. So I thought advertising design was like how I was going to make my money. And then on the side, I was going to have this like side hustle of making toys and games or whatever it was, But what actually happened is I was managing art departments for an ad agency, and Decipher Trading Card Games rang me up, and they said, "Hey, listen, we've got a need for a person like you. Do you want to come interview for it?" I interviewed for it. And that was my launch into games. I did trading card games and managed their art department for 5 years. And then from there, I launched into consumer products with Swimways, doing pool products and outdoor recreational products. And then I was like, I'm never looking back. I'm not going back to ad agency. That's not happening. Whatever I have to do to stay in this industry. And now I've been in it over 20 years. So I feel like I'm probably going to stay.
It just might stick.
Yeah, it's probably my thing now.
So having that ad experience though, because there's one thing to have like a good idea, but it's another thing to be able to sell it. Like, do you find that really kind of speaks into what you're doing now still?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It also like the hustle, like you could be a hero one day in an ad agency and you literally start from zero the next day. You're like, oh, we delivered that thing. The client's happy. And then the next day the account executive would come in and say, hey, we got a rush job for, pick it, Franklin Tractors, Marriott. We had a lot of accounts. I worked on the steel chainsaw stuff, like a lot of fun stuff. And every day it was like, start again. You don't get to build that over time.
See, with that beard, I feel like you could model for that those chainsaw ads. Just to throw that out there.
I would be the guy that accidentally cuts his leg.
So you started working for a number of companies, Swimways and everybody. You had the opportunity to work on quite a few different projects, but then ultimately ended up moving into your own Paperback Creative. Do you want to tell us about kind of moving into that role?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When I left, so it's kind of a like backstory to the front, but when I left Swimways, I went to Toys R Us. And when I was at Toys R Us, I was able to see a lot of the inner workings of a retail environment, as well as like working on private label products. And, starting in Swimways, I started going to China and I started seeing that side of it, the production side of it. At Toys R Us, I saw the vendor side of it and a lot of like how it works when you're an in-house design agency for a large retailer. And then I was fortuitous enough to get to have a job managing the Monopoly team at Hasbro and seeing that side of it. And after seeing all of that, really the special part of it for me is like, I work from ideation to shelf, but in that front end, that ideation to like product prototype to kind of making it happen is the really, really exciting place. And I thought, if I want to keep myself in that space the longest I can, I'm going to need to start my own company that focuses in on how to get from ideation to shelf, really like locking into how to get from ideation to prototype to pitch. And like you said, that advertising background, pitching to people all the time and kind of sitting with clients in client meetings really has been super helpful in that regard. But, I didn't know if I knew enough to launch this company when I launched it. And, that's kind of that like imposter syndrome we all sort of like suffer from. And about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months into it, I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever done. This is absolutely where I should be. And, like I could see where all the years and all the places I've been have really like locked in, so it's just been amazing.
Yeah, you're made for it.
Little set of I'm like a little minifig that got assembled from the right pieces.
So let's talk a little bit about Inventor Relations. You are an expert on spotting what might make a good product. What are you looking for?
So one of the things I think all of us say, anyone who's an inventor or in inventor relationships, you're looking for where it's a good partnership, where you're looking for somebody who's like open to the pivot or the slight modification of the idea to fit the company that you're working with. A lot of the ideas come in one way and leave a little bit differently. And, for some people that's not okay. And for some people that's very much okay. And you want to make sure that you're aligning with the right people for the companies that you're working for. When looking for like, oh man, this is going to be it. This is the next hot idea. This is the next whatever. A little bit of that prior to meeting with all the inventors, I like to research the category we're in and kind of look at what's happening in that category and where I think the space is. Definitely, like I don't usually start from a place of like, this is going to be toy of the year, but there are definitely times when you see something and you're like, man, I mean, just the way they've approached this, the way they've put this together, the play pattern and experience that they've created, it's like, I want it right now, like if somebody could make me a copy that, and when you have that like feeling inside of you, it's just like an electric energy. And I've definitely had that a few times where I'm just like, this thing right here is going to be huge. And I think that's a gut feeling from having seen like a lot of stuff go through the years. We would do a ton of products at Toys R Us. Swimways was unique in that they did a lot of inventor submissions. We would like look at a ton of them and then whittle it down to about 40 and launch about 10 to 20. And of course, Hasbro is basically a machine in that regard. But having seen a lot of things come through and seen, the real professionals, the people that are just amazing at it. Like I hold up Dougal Grimes and Tanya Thompson in high regard, and having worked with both of them, you kind of see what they weed out, even if you're like, well, that's a reasonable idea, but there might be a lot of work to get it there. And I'm not sure if the team is up for that. And then other things are like, that's just out of the park the moment you see it. A lot of that for me is based on my preliminary research and just a gut feeling from all the years I've been doing it, especially like in spaces that I feel like people have been over and over and over, like an RC product or a doll product. There's a lot of things that have been done. I don't know how many quadcopters I've seen that shoot missiles and bubbles and this thing and that thing. And you're just looking like, well, what else does it do? And they're like, that's my invention. And you're like, all right, I don't think it's a great fit.
Just let them down
you
easy.
made the quadcopter shoot things. So has everybody. And some of that's just like, that just is what it is, right? Like there's also that side of it where it's hard, where you're the worst part about it, right?
What are some of the things that when somebody brings you an idea that makes something really stand out?
So I would say the play experience, right? So you can take an idea that's been done before. A classic example might be like a mechanical arm or hand or something like that. And then, one of the companies I worked for, you've seen them. You've seen the mechanical arms, you've seen the mechanical claws, you've seen the grabbing devices, and the play experience of putting together this mechanical hand and then wearing it like a giant glove. When when you play test that, like it was great at Hasbro. We had our own fun lab. We had our own play test, and you see a kid light up with that, you know that you've knocked that out of the park. If you have that same experience in the pitch meeting, right? Like if somebody's presenting something to you, almost certainly they're excited about it, and that excitement's going to get you a little excited about it. But if when you engage with the thing, you have that unique play experience where you're like, I want to do this again and again. So it's not a specific, like I go in there with these weird little business side of me things where it's like, oh man, it'd be great if something was $19.99 or something was $39.99. But if you see something that's just unreal, and in your brain, just based on my experience, I'm like, that's probably going to be a $39.99 item in a $20 category. I might still go for it because there's some breakout products where you're like, yeah, that might be able to demand that, and it's such a gut call. It's such an emotional thing for me. But if I haven't seen it before, if I haven't seen it in my research, and if the play experience is quick to learn, easy to understand, easy to communicate, easy to demonstrate, you have to sell a product into a retailer to get it to the consumer. And if you can't demonstrate it, and if it's not easy to understand and easy to communicate, it's probably, no matter how cool it is, it's probably never getting to the shelf. So a little bit of that too.
Yeah, we had Tanya Thompson on here recently, and she spent a good bit of time explaining just the importance of a video. And trying to get an idea across. And I'm a firm believer, if somebody doesn't get an idea like in 30 seconds, like maybe you've got to rethink that idea a little bit.
Oh, for real. Yeah.
Are there some of those types of points that, like, when somebody's bringing an idea beyond just a video, like what else do you need to see to really wrap your mind around a product or an idea?
So I feel, if they've made a video, hopefully they have a prototype, right? And I very much have sort of said that, like, if you have a prototype that's demonstratable, understandable, and communicable, like that you can send me and I can give to the team, or, like you can use to demonstrate internally, because the inventor relations person is the outwardly facing, they're on the inventor side. They're the coach, they're the communicator, they're the, like, pep talk when you need it kind of guy. But then when they turn around, they're kind of the salesperson, right? We have to sell it in. And all the tools that someone can give you for success are certainly helpful, And I know that, like, videos, Zoom certainly changed it, but videos were here long before Zoom. And they were definitely something that when the inventor makes a video of themselves and their enthusiasm about a product, it's such a great tool to sell it internally. As well as, prototypes have to be kind of visually, they can be rough, but they need to really, they don't have to be like shelf ready, but they need to really like demonstrate the physical product. And I've seen a lot of them that just didn't get there. They just didn't get far enough. And the idea is great, but it's hard to sell it in to the right people because the prototype fell a little flat. I'm also a big advocate for sell sheets. A lot of people have walked away from them, but it allows, and it's probably my advertising background, but it allows the inventor to say, this is what I call it. This is who I think it's for. This is the age grade, the target market, toy, game, whatever. This is the play pattern. Kind of here's my little bullet points that'll help you sell it. And it becomes that cheat sheet for the inventor relations person to email on to the team. Hey, here's a video and here's a sell sheet for this product. If you want to see the prototype, I have it in my office. And I think that those two things are really, someone will click on a 30-second PDF before they will click on a 2-minute video. And I think that you can sell it into them like an ad, and then they click on the video to watch more, and then they walk over to the office to pick up the prototype, and there's kind of that whole sell in. I think that's super helpful. For certain, you got to have a video though. Like these days, you just can't get around it.
Well, the amount of ads that are made for things that don't even exist yet, like the thousands and thousands of ideas that have an ad just to hopefully get made so they can have, public ads that go out there.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy too. Like I think that if you're not a professional inventor today, you may not understand how much time went into before the pitch, and it's, when people say they have 10 ideas or 20 ideas, I'm like, yeah, I meet with people that have 300 ideas. And when you think about 300 ideas and how much time went into that, that's a lot of time for an inventor to spend on the hopes that somebody licenses it, you know?
It is a lot of
And
time.
I try to appreciate it. You know, I try to sort of say, man, this could be a year's worth of work here. You know, like, it's crazy. It's definitely crazy.
So going back just a little bit, you said that it's a bit of a gut feeling, an emotional feeling when you see something that you know you want. Would you say that kind of connects to that sort of childhood heart, that it's that instant, like you know the childhood heart, you want to play with that? It's
oh yeah. I'm 100%. I'm still buying toys. I'm still engaged. You know, like it's a bit weird, right? But you know, I'll see something in a toy aisle because we're all walking them to see what's happening, and I'll be like, oh man, I really want that. You know, like sometimes it's goofy, like, you know, I've bought some action figures, let's call them, but I've bought some figures over time that are a little silly, like Star Wars stuff. For sure, I'm still buying that. And sometimes it's like an RC car that I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. You know, a number of years ago, I bought a little tiny RC car where you could take the wheels off, you could pop the top off. It was very modular, and you could buy all these and I was like, that is so amazing. I buy it, I play with it for 2 days, and then I basically turn it, you know, give it to somebody else. But like those experiences, definitely still have them. Definitely still like looking for them. You know,
that's awesome.
I can tell by the wall behind you, for those of you that are just listening and not watching this on YouTube. You know, your entire office, I think, is littered with toys, games, and little weird accoutrements.
It really is. It really. And like, you know, just when you see something that's just so different, so unique, you know, like a number of years back, one of the toy companies released Fugglers, which was plush toys with real teeth. And I was like, this is amazing. I bought 3 of them.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so good. You know?
Yeah, they
were kind of creepy, kind of cool. It was like when the Ugly Dolls first came out, you know?
Yeah.
It was cool.
So what's a good place for somebody that is trying to break into toy and game? What's a good way for somebody to get their start that maybe has got a couple of ideas? They're not the professional inventor yet, perhaps, but they've got a couple of ideas that they just can't shake. How do they break in?
I think that, so the thing that I've been telling people when they reach out to me is almost every town has a local inventor group or inventor club. I think that's a great place to start. I think go down to your maker space, and, you know, a lot of towns have maker spaces and you can find people there. Online for certain, like People of Play, which used to be called Chai Tag, Mojo Nation, you know, a lot of those communities. I feel like you're as powerful as your tribe, as the people that support you. And if you want to become an inventor, I think it's really important to connect with other inventors. Certainly there's schools out there that teach you to be an inventor. I'm an advocate of that a little bit. You know, if you feel like, I feel like whatever you need to get you from ideation to prototype, right? And that's kind of where I focus, is in that space for the people that, so many people have these amazing ideas and they don't know how to make a prototype, which is why I say, hey, talk to your inventor group, ask them who they're using, go down to your makerspace, find a person, you know, that can make you a prototype. And then once you have that prototype, probably the stage of making a video with a mobile phone today, super easy, right? Like anyone can make a video today. And you can learn how to make videos on YouTube. There's definitely people out there talking about it.
Ask any 10-year-old with an iPhone, they'll show you how.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have kids, they'll probably shoot the video and edit it for you. You may or may not like the final product, but and then once you have a pitch deck, you know, the People of Play event lets you know, people that are non-professional inventors, they participate as well. And they also have like additional opportunities. Mojo Nation has them. You know, there's definitely places online that you can connect to. And I think that between those things, if you find your support group amongst the inventor community, they're also going to point you to the right pitch group. You know, even outside of toy and games, you know, there's so many shows. You know, if you're not a toy and game person, although that's my favorite category in the place that I operate, you know, if you're home and hardware, there's a show for that. If you're any of these places that you're operating in, there's a a place that you can go, a show, and actually on my website there was a question I got a lot. We put a list of events for people. So there's a calendar, you just click on it free and you can see all the events in toy and game that are happening every month,
That's awesome.
And we also there's another tab called design resources that'll help people find like how to make prototypes and how to, it's just 2 clicks on our website.
And we'll share your website in the links below. And why don't you go ahead and just share that here now?
It's paperbagcreative.fun, Fun, and you'll see design resources and industry events. And those will be 2 tabs that are on there. And we're constantly adding to it, trying to keep it up to date for people. Just that's our community outreach sort of thing to help people. So
super helpful.
Cool. What kind of pitfalls do you see inventors falling into?
Traps.
Oh my God. The one that I guess annoys me or kind of like, I'm like, didn't you, I don't know, didn't you know kind of thing, is when inventors don't research the company they're about to pitch to, or they don't listen to the information they receive via email, and they show up with a totally incongruent product, right? They show up to somebody who does a lot of wood and learning products, and they've got a very involved electronic toy, right? And you're just like, oh, this is awkward because it's an instant no, right? It's like, if you just did a little searching on the website of this company, you would know not even to pitch that, right? That's, I think, the biggest pitfall is people don't research the people they're pitching to. They don't research the companies they're pitching to. And then they show up in the room and they're disappointed when they get the no, but they didn't set themselves up for success. It's like, oh, come on, like know the company.
One of the things with the pitfalls is I assume that a lot of the young inventors, people that aren't familiar with the industry, that don't have 20 years of experience, they don't connect all the dots of like, well, this has to be manufactured and we have to be able to make this for 20% of the retail cost. Or we've got to be able to manufacture, maybe one company only makes 5,000 units a year, so they're not going to injection mold this thing, versus a large company that maybe makes 500,000 units where tooling isn't an issue. So one of your benefits is having that understanding of the whole production side. So maybe we can dive into that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've had the opportunity to go from not just scouting the ideas, but helping take them all the way through like a factory. Have you been to you weren't just born out overseas, but you've got to go visit a few factories here and there?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Asia, and I've definitely seen a lot of factories, and I've seen the changes. I've seen some very cool changes, and I've seen some like stuff that's like, wow, that's unique.
Like what's unique?
One of the things that we all hear about, right, and I didn't see that much of, is we all hear about kids in factories, right? And so you're like, okay, well, let's keep an eye out, and let's make sure that that's not happening. But most of the factories that we work with today, they're tested, they're audited, they're surprise tested, they're all these things. So you hardly expect to walk into a factory today and see something like that, right? Like you don't expect to walk into a factory and see kids or some of these things that people all think about. But I have definitely walked into some factories, and certainly there's like the factory dog. There's almost always a dog that runs around on the grounds, and it's the owner's dog, it's somebody's dog. Somebody in a position of power has this really expensive dog that's now running around the grounds in the factory, and that that's pretty common, right? No big deal. But I mean, there's one factory in particular that I'm thinking of that I walked into one time. And, we're just getting ready to start some business with them. This is pretty early on in my career. I've been going a few years at this point and kind of have an expectation of what to see. And we sit down, we have tea. It's very much relationship building. And we're talking about what the two companies can do together. And they're like, let's take the factory tour. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. And a lot of that is just sort of formality, because you've seen so many injection molded machines. You've seen so many ultrasonic welding machines. You've seen, blow molding, all these things. You've seen a ton of them. But part of walking the factory is to see that they're actually in the factory and that they're not subcontracting everything out and just renting a building with a conference room and doing assembly only. And so you have to take the tour. And so you don't expect really much other than like, this is our this and this is our that. And we're walking out of the conference room and we're just sort of headed down the hall. And there's a little door you go through to the back area and you're walking past engineering. And as I'm looking up, because you look, oh yeah, engineering, that's cool. I see you've got drop test machines and you got this shit. Yeah, okay, great. And I look up and there's a horse's head in a window in the hall.
Just a horse's head?
Just the head sticking in through the window. And at first I think they've mounted a head and I'm a little bit horrified. And I'm like, oh my God, is this like the factory owner's favorite horse? And it passed away. And then the head moves and it looks at us. And I'm like, is this a Billy Bass moment? Like, I don't even know. My head is just like, this isn't real, right? Your brain can't process that because that is the last thing of all the things you've seen. There's not going to be a horse in a factory, right? No way. And I'm like, am I seeing a horse? I'm like saying this out loud. Am I seeing a horse? Is that a horse? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's the horse. And I'm like, no, you don't get to just say that.
It's just the horse. Everybody's got a horse.
Every factory, right? Oh, you mean other factory didn't have a horse? Like they're very nonchalant about it. That's the horse. And I'm looking at my team and I'm like, how come you didn't tell me about a horse? And they're kind of smiling because they knew that there was a horse. And I'm like, I have to see the horse. Like, I want to forget where we're headed, which was injection molding. I want to see the horse. And I'm like, what's the story of the horse? Like, just totally like misdirect, right? And so now I got to walk, like down the hall, around the wall and out a door. And there's literally a horse in this factory. And I have to think I'm not the only person that met this horse, because essentially what I came to learn is that the factory owner is taking care of this horse because there was an accident in the street in front of his factory. The police brought the horse to the factory and said, you have to take care of it till we find the owner. And it has been years since they found the owner. But the police check back all the time to make sure the horse is still there. And so it's like, so literally the factory owner's like, I have a horse. I don't know what to do about it, but I can't get rid of the horse because the police come. And so I'm waiting for them to bring the owner to get the horse. And then, initially they had it in like this area penned in the back, but apparently the horse was smart, got out, and they just gave up after a while and said, just go wherever you want to go, horse.
People don't realize the amount of things that go on behind the scenes. Like when they get their toy shows up in their Christmas stocking, they don't realize that, there was a factory horse that was overseeing the whole production.
Totally. And this is a factory that made like Walmart products and Disney products. And, this is not a small little shanty of a factory. This is a legitimate factory with multiple buildings and a horse.
A factory with some serious horsepower.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Dad joke opportunity.
Couldn't help yourself. Couldn't help. I mean, that was definitely a standout one. And like I said, I'm sure that there are other people in this industry that have met that horse, because that was like a factory that multiple people used, It was crazy. I mean, all the usual stuff plus a horse.
Well, that beyond the horse stuff, like what is usual stuff? Like what are some of the steps that you've got to validate or verify when you're going from, okay, my gut tells me that, my 10-year-old self would buy this as fast as I possibly could. I think everybody else is going to want to do that. Now you're starting to work at the factory. What are those validation points you're looking for?
Yeah. So we kind of have this checklist when we go visit a factory. We look for factory capabilities, right? So we know, like you said, we know if this toy is going to be an injection molded toy, all right, well, great. They've got 2 injection molding machines. What's your capacity there? What we're going to do production wise is going to be about this many. So can they handle our capacity, right? Do they have enough labor force, assembly line, space, machines? Is it going to meet up with our production prediction, right? So what's our forecast versus what their capacity is? You also want to look to make sure that they have all the ICTIs and all the ISOs and all the things that we need these days for testing and qualifications.
Those are some fancy acronyms that you're just throwing out there.
Just the fancy, like these are the tests that people do to make sure that factories produce things in a manner that's consistent with industry standards, right? And then we, of course, we have all the, like the toy testing requirements, right? You want to make sure that they can do ASTM, which is the American side of it, and EN, which is, the European EN71 side of it. And so all of that's kind of before you even show up at the factory, you've asked them these questions, And then when you show up at the factory, you're sort of qualifying that they do indeed have the labor force they talked about. They do indeed have the assembly line they talked about and the machines that they spoke of. And then you're asking to see, packaging and product that came out of this factory. And as you're walking the factory, they're in production. You don't show up when they're not working. And so you're seeing just kind of like, what's the standard of safety? Do people have safety glasses on? Do they have gloves on where they should? Are they wearing the appropriate clothing? Is there any craziness that could go on,
Like a horse.
Like a horse.
I'm glad. I'm still stuck on this horse's head you run into. I'm just glad it wasn't like some Godfather story of like. I'm glad there was a horse's body attached.
I was very glad it was attached to a body too.
I'm still
but
stuck on
like
this horse.
when I did microscopes and telescopes for Toys R Us, we're looking for clean rooms. We're looking for because they're making the lenses and they're putting together these optical products for us. And, we're making sure that you're walking through spaces that like basically vacuum all the dust off you. So a lot of the things that they've said in their factory submission when they've pre-qualified for the production, you're checking to make sure it's on the ground, like it's not a picture that they got from a friend or that kind of stuff happens too. I've definitely walked into factories that did not look like the picture on the brochure kind of thing, and you're like, where's the building that's in this picture?
So when you've got this product idea though, and you're trying to work at the factory, is there some secret equation that you're trying to look for? Like, what are the stats that you need to have this that's now just an idea, and I've got this factory, but now for this idea to be successful, what is that? Like, what do we need to get out of that factory to make it work?
So a lot of times when we go from idea, and hopefully we have like a little preliminary prototype that demonstrates the idea, you'll find that a lot of companies will send that preliminary prototype over to get preliminary costing. And they just want to know that A, the factory can manufacture it, they have the capabilities, and B, it's going to meet the target cost. So a little bit like what you mentioned earlier, which is, hey, we know based on our research, this should be $14.99 or $19.99 or whatever it is. And, a lot of people can use quick math and just divide by 5, right? And just sort of say, hey, is it in that ballpark for the costing to get us to, when we're talking about 20% of retail price and we want to get to that on product cost, then is this going to make it, right? And if it's not going to make it, are there changes we can make? And, a lot of the most capable factories and the ones that you want to work with, they have engineering teams that can help you through that. And that's like one of the changes that I've definitely seen over the years is more and more capable teams on the engineering side for factories where you would just be amazed at the talent that is over there nowadays. A lot of people think, they can't, there was an old saying that was just really just horrible where it was like replicate but can't innovate. And I would 100% disagree today. I would say that all the people I'm working with today can solve problems, they can innovate, they're creative. And that's one of the things, right? You want to send the prototype over to get the preliminary cost. And then it's like, well, do you have any suggestions? Right? It's very much a partnership and a team. And when you get that preliminary cost back, you're going to take it into the team and you're going to say, based on this cost, are you guys comfortable with this retail? And, that conversation ensues. And then a lot of the green lights and milestones from this point forward, you've already play tested it. You've already sort of qualified it before you send it over there. You know that the product has value. You know that the concept is good. And now it's, can we make the concept for the retail the market will support? And that kind of happens with that preliminary investigation with the factory. And the secret sauce a lot of times with new inventors is they've got a great idea. They've prototyped it in a way that you can never make it, but it demonstrates the great idea. And if you can turn their great idea into something that's manufacturable, that's the home run. And if you can manufacture it for the right price, right, you can sell that all day. But it is from things that are bought on Amazon and glued together with hot glue to actual prototypes that you could go to production and CAD files. That's the in between.
Super helpful.
Yeah. What kind of advice and maybe words of caution can you offer people kind of on that production side?
I think one of the challenges, I think, from the production side of things is just knowing your timeline, right? And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to grasp. When we say, hey, yeah, we're going to put this on shelf a year from now, and they think you're just being laissez-faire and a little bit lazy and don't work too hard. And you're like, no, there's a lot of work from here to on shelf, and and even today it's even worse, where you're like, how could this possibly be on the water for 90 days? But it's getting it out of the port and getting it into the port, and 45 days actually on the water, and all these things that go into it. The timeline is one of those things that I think a lot of people don't understand. You start with an initial concept, and then you go to a preliminary prototype, and people sometimes call that a PP, and then you go to like an engineering prototype, and then you go to a final engineering prototype, and then hopefully that's your sign-off sample, but it might be another one. And there can be weeks in between all that, just chewing up time to get to a place where you're like, this is the thing we're going to sell. And before all that, you've made CAD files, and before all that, you've made like preliminary tooling probably, and that can take time, and up to 60 or 90 days sometimes. And, it just stacks up. And I think one of the things that people don't understand is that every one of those milestones is money, right? It's a decision that somebody made to spend more money. And I think that's sometimes with people that are outside of the direct to factory space, they're wondering what's happening or why it isn't done yet, and there's the whole investigation, like, can we make it for the right cost? And then there's the whole investigation, can we make it manufacturable, right? And it gets complicated, where you make a product that you 3D printed, and then to injection molded, it has all these undercuts, and your tooling requires all these springs and moving pieces, and that's just a lot of money. Like, it's not a straight tool where it just comes together like a clamshell and pulls apart. A lot of that it can drive the cost up of the product, like it's amortized across the product. And so when you spread out all this additional money that wasn't thought about, it can sometimes just blow the product out of the water,
What having the idea is probably the cheapest part. It's moving forward. I don't know how many times somebody's come to me like, oh, we want this by Christmas. I'm like, oh, absolutely, but it's not going to be this Christmas. Like, you're like, there's
so
definitely typically a good year's worth of going from an idea through something that is high production can easily take a year.
Well, and the delay of decisions sometimes, like, people are like, oh, we still have so much time. And it's like, no, we had a week for that decision. Like, it's a domino. It's your decision today in February affects my ship date in June or July or whenever it's going to be. It very much like pushes things around. And I think that's a pitfall that the industry as a whole, veterans and everybody, falls into, where it's like, we have so much time. And that's why I'm like, that timeline, that milestone, that's a great project manager is just as important as a great product designer.
Good.
Yeah.
You've worked on a lot of projects, a lot of toys and games through the years. Do you have any standouts that you'd be most proud of?
Yeah, for certain. Yeah, actually. One of the things that I love that I did at Toys R Us, we had a little, just functional, basically off the shelf remote control dinosaur. And we were turning it into a dragon. And so we turned it into a dragon, just changing the rotomolded head and adding some wings and kind of some stuff. And it was like, how does this thing get cooler? And of course, your first instinct is it breathes fire, right? I mean, that's how it gets cooler. But we couldn't do that, safety standards, stuff we talked about. So we're like, how do we make this thing?
It's not the 80s anymore. Come on.
Can't do it. There were some factories early on that definitely were like doing some stuff out of the tailpipes of RC cars that you're like, that's not a toy. You can't do that. But we were like, how do we put smoke into this? And solving that problem and working with that vendor at the time and using an ultrasonic humidifier that's basically the same thing that's, it's basically what's in a vape pen today. tucking it into a tiny little dragon's head, and then blowing smoke out of the dragon and backlighting it with an LED. Like just that whole process. Like I love making cool stuff, and I love working with people that are just like so creative and so problem solving, and like to take what was originally like a T-Rex, and the T-Rex, sold for years and years, and making a dragon that breathes smoke was just amazing. And then to literally like a few years later see Hasbro do basically the same thing, I was like, 2 years earlier, buddy, 2 years earlier. Like those are great when you look around the industry and you're like, man, I feel like I had a little impact, Another one that I'm like super proud of, and most of everything that I've done, I can't think of a moment when it isn't a team, like it's teamwork, right? And I managed the Monopoly team for Hasbro, and we did 3 Hasbros that I think were just rock star. We did Monopoly Cheaters, we did Monopoly Gamer, and we did Monopoly Millennials. And Monopoly Millennials was one of those moments where you're just like, I can't even believe that just happened. We had, as Hasbro, we had an obligation to make a product for Walmart that was a Monopoly product. And we got on the phone with the Walmart buyer, and she was just amazing because she was so participatory in this process, where we started talking to her about the monopolies that we had in the queue, and was she interested in one of those? And some of the feedback was that she wasn't, but she was interested in a different concept. And right there on the phone, me, the VP, the account executive at the time, and the Walmart buyer came up with the concept for Monopoly for Millennials. And we made that thing pretty fast, like on a tight timeline for them. They got that thing on shelf in the fall, and they couldn't keep it in
Christmas.
Time for Christmas. And they couldn't keep that thing in inventory for the next 6 months. They just sold the heck out of it. And it was very much like a collaboration on the buyer knowing their target market and what they thought they could sell. And, Hasbro being willing to meet them halfway and sort of make something that was going to work really well for them. And that, and then turning around to the team that I was managing and saying, let's just do this. Let's make it amazing. And, that kind of moment, that kind of making that kind of product, like I'm super proud of the ideation, the brainstorming that went on the phone. And I'm super proud of like what we did with that idea afterwards. Those are the things that are just like, wow, that's cool. That's great. So those are 2 standouts for sure. I mean, there's a lot of them I love.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like, which one's your favorite kid? It's like all of them. Yeah. Well, Ed, you are high octane when it comes to creativity and getting things done. I'm just grateful that you've come on here on Hidden Roll to kind of share your backstory, some insight. But before we wrap things up, one thing we like to do is throw a couple of random questions at you based on the Hidden Roll die.
I'm ready.
And Branson's going to be your surrogate roller here. And we'll see what kind of questions we get. So just kind of first thing that pops in your mind here. Now, let's see, what do we get? We got the Broken Heart. What is that? Oh, what types of toys or games do you just love to hate?
The ones that don't have a clear play pattern or experience attached to them. When you can look at a toy and you're like, man, that was just a tick the box experience, almost designed by committee. They're like, we need a doll. Okay, check. We need a doll that poops. Check. And she cries. Check. And you're like, where's the innovation? That bums me out. When you have, anytime you have an opportunity to put a toy on the shelf and you just tick the boxes to get it out there, I'm like, oh, come on.
You're wasting shelf space.
Yeah. And we're literally like, there's so many people that would kill to have your job. If you phone it in on a day, on any given day, okay. But if you phone it in on a product, come on. No way.
Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer. I'm going to give that one 10 points. 10 points.
Good score. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Oh, Broken Heart. We already did that one. All right, the Crossbones. Okay. What is that? Oh, Game Fight. What game do you play that ends up leading to the most game fights?
The classics. Sorry is a big one in my house. And, Sorry is just set up to start a fight. It's like,
How? You're saying sorry?
Yeah. Are you though? Certainly Monopoly, the classic Monopoly is also set up for destruction, board flipping moments. There's more. Monopoly Deal is the best Monopoly out there. It's a card game, and tons of fun with that. But the classic board game, I've definitely had some people storm it.
That's coming from somebody who helped manage the team.
Well, and I think the issue is I know how to get to the win moment quicker. And so that's not great. You can win with just the light blue and brown spaces pretty quickly, and nobody wants those spaces. So,
ooh, good to know. Secret advice for all the Monopoly players from the inside. All right, one more.
Stack hotels on it.
One more. I'm gonna give that 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. Oh, come on, Broken Heart. All right, $. If money were no object, what toy or game would you recreate in some massive experience?
Oh, you may not like this answer. I would love, if money was no object, I would love to create a kid concept factory. So one of the things that I didn't know as a kid is that this was like something that could be done. And I would love to just set up a place that people could go like summer camp, and professional inventors and people in the toy industry would show up and do little speeches and whatever pep talks. And from the beginning of camp to the end of camp, they would invent a toy from ideation to shelf, and they would invent a game from ideation to shelf. And at the end of camp, the kids go home with that experience. And I think, man, that would have the biggest impact on our industry.
Like space camp for toys.
Yeah, like exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
I love it. I'm going to give that 3 gold stars.
Thank you. Like, I think that, like kids' imaginations, there's definitely studies about this where kids are super imaginative, and then we kind of like move the imagination and creativity out of them over time. And it's disheartening. And I think things like this are so super important.
Yeah.
Well, that's 10 points, 2 thumbs up, and 3 gold stars. You did well.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I need to work on my scoring. So, well, Ed, again, thank you for being on here. And again, just for people to find or follow you, that was paperbagcreative.fun.
Yep.
And
they can find me on LinkedIn under Ed Gartin on LinkedIn. And yeah, would love to connect with everyone,
Wonderful. And you've been listening to Hidden Roll. And until next time, keep playing some games.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
This has been Hidden Roll, the brains behind your favorite toys, games, and all things play. If you like what we're doing, the best way you can support us is to share us with your favorite brains. Please thumbs up, leave a review, and follow Hidden Roll Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. You can also sign up for our newsletter at www.hiddenrollpodcast.com for a monthly sneak peek at our upcoming content. That's Hidden Roll, ROLE, podcast.com. Our episodes are available on all major listening platforms, or if you'd like to see our beautiful faces, all of our content is available to watch on YouTube. If you know of someone who would be a great fit to appear in our podcast, or if you'd like to learn the story behind any toy or game, send us an inquiry at hiddenrollpodcast.com/suggestions. Or let us know on our social media. We love to hear your feedback and ideas. Once again, special thanks to Pop, People of Play, the one-stop hub for all toy and game inventors. Visit www.peopleofplay.com to learn more. This podcast is also made possible by the continued support of the brains who never grew up, inventors of play, Streamline Design. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.